Hi and welcome to a new episode of the State of the Net podcast. I'm Paolo Valdemarin.
And I'm Ewan Simple.
And I guess that you all thought that Ewan had gone back driving trucks, haven't you?
Oh, that's not fair, Paolo. Because we were just before we started recording, I was going to talk about Facebook and how I popped my head back up on Facebook to share some pictures of our cat. And what made me recoil again was all these people saying, "Shouldn't you be driving a truck? Shouldn't you be minding your own business?" So I did get a letter from Baroness von something or other, saying, would I please consider going back? And yeah, people will probably disagree with me, but I thought, well, frankly, you've undervalued the industry for decades, allowed it to descend to the lowest common denominator, and then farmed all those lowest common denominator drivers back to Europe, back to Eastern Europe. And then you expect me to dig you out of it, No thanks.
Thanks, but no thanks.
Yeah. I mean, I do, I'll sit in the motorway and look up at some of the big Scanias and the Arctics, which I never got to do seriously. And funnily enough, Penny's working for somebody that needs to ship a lot of stuff backwards and forwards in big trucks. And they've said, tell your husband we'll give him anything. He can do 1 day a month, 1 day a year. We don't care. He can name his terms. But, we're about to get delivery of this small camper van. And I really don't want to sort of tie myself to something, make any obligations before I disappear off in that. But when I get back and I've got that out of my system, never say never. It's an itch I still have to scratch.
Oh, anyway, even if the Eastern European driver comes, they're going to leave in 3 months. We're going to throw them out the day before Christmas.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's the fact that they're supposedly, in the first place, they were meant to have taken away all these jobs from all these Brits. Well, where are all these Brits now? They've gone. There's nobody jumping forwards. And of course, I know it takes, months and a lot of money, £3,000 in my case, to get the Class 1. Unless they really lower the standards, which none of us want if you're driving on a motorway.
Doesn't sound like a good idea.
No, it really doesn't.
A tanker full of fuel.
I know. Then it's just going to take time. It's not going to happen overnight. But it's fascinating to me how people need something like this to realise just how completely dependent we are on that industry. That nothing we do, nothing we eat, nothing we buy, nothing we wear happens without a truck driver, several truck drivers,
Yeah.
and you take the truck drivers out and the world stops, it's there's no other way.
Yeah. Something that I was reading is that also lots of truck drivers have moved to local deliveries that had exploded during the pandemic because more and more people started buying stuff online.
Of course.
And it's a much better job because basically you work locally, you drive smaller trucks, you have your round and you basically only work during the day because you can only make deliveries while people are awake.
Yep.
I
knew several drivers even before COVID who had just found it too much, as I did. It's stressful. It's in some circumstances dangerous, depending what you're loading or unloading. It's dangerous in the sense of you're very aware of the amount of damage you can do with one of these big trucks in a city centre. And frankly, buzzing around in an Amazon van for not that much less money. That's the daft thing. I mean, you can do a white van man thing for about 10 quid an hour. And the rigids that I was driving were about 13 quid an hour. Now, I think some of the bigger Arctics in those days, you'd maybe get 15. But 15 quid, I mean, my daughters were making nearly that much serving coffees in a local cafe. It's bonkers.
Yeah, and they give you the keys of this huge, very expensive machine to drive around all by yourself. That's crazy.
Well, that's the other thing that's actually quite intimidating. It's the fact that you are totally responsible not only for the truck but for its load. And if you get in a pickle, if the truck breaks down or you get stuck in a motorway pile up or something like that, it's down to you. There's nobody else there to help. So that's part of the stress. I mean, you're always aware of that any pickles you get into, you're going to have to get yourself back out pretty much. But like I say, every time I look at one of these trucks, I get that glow of thinking, oh God, yeah, I could fancy doing that again. And then the sort of shock of horror goes through my blood, and I think, no, don't do it, don't do it again.
Anyway, Facebook is down. Not only Facebook, WhatsApp, and Instagram, as we are recording this at 6 p.m. on the 4th of October, are down, and everybody's complaining about this on Twitter.
You meant down. I thought you meant their share volume was down. You mean they're off?
No. They are off.
Right.
I mean, it's like WhatsApp is not working, Facebook is not working, Instagram is not working. I think they had enough, and they just said, "Fuck it, turn it off."
Fantastic.
Leave.
The world would be a better place.
But what I find funny is that there is people complaining, and I was thinking, I mean, what do you want, your money back?
Well, they want to speak to whoever's in charge of the internet to get it sorted, don't they, really?
Yeah, exactly. It's like, okay, I appreciate that, you might need to use WhatsApp or something, and the fact that it's down is not convenient. Mm-hmm. But hey, we're not paying for any of this shit, right? I know. Can we complain? I mean, and the way people complain. About the whistleblower.
Well, yeah, I was just reading up about that, and there's so much rotten in the state of Denmark that's been coming for a while. I mean, it's maybe just worth saying why I pulled back from the Facebook thing, but it was just the weariness at the indignation engine that it had become, and Twitter to some extent as well, or maybe more Twitter. It depends. I think people's experiences of them are different depending on who they're connected with and what they talk about. But I've just generally found it much, much, much more relaxing on a daily basis not to be in those spaces. And I miss the upside of the social thing, because that was what got us all interested in the first place. We've talked about this before, but and there are real risks that I might lose touch with significant numbers of people who I consider friends. But generally, the upside has outweighed the downside considerably for me.
I must say that, I mean, I have unfollowed or unfriended a whole bunch of people just because they felt negative. And it wasn't about, I disagreed with them. It was literally about, I mean, I am connected to a bunch of people whose ideas I disagree with, but I mean, it doesn't really upset me. I actually find it almost stimulating. Mm-hmm. But I have, I've been doing this for quite a while. I've been constantly unfollowing people that have, this constant negative complaining approach
that's
to
what bugged me. Yeah.
And I must say that, right now I have a pretty good, I mean, I don't have such a negative feeling on Facebook. I pretty much don't go to Twitter because I guess that the type of network I have on Twitter, I mean, starting to remove the negative people from there would just be daunting. Yeah. But as far as Facebook is concerned, it's fine. It's like, there was a friend of ours who posted recently that they have unfollowed everybody on LinkedIn, and this makes LinkedIn usable and nice again.
Yes.
And it's not easy because you have to do it manually.
Oh, it's horrendous. They make it very difficult. Yeah. I've tried.
Unfollow every single person. Yeah. So basically, you're still connected to them, but you don't have any of the social media stuff on LinkedIn because you're not following anyone. And I thought, that's an interesting idea.
But you see, so to be honest, it's not just that. So I found myself when I posted some pictures of our cat Albie in his clear plastic carrier that we took him to a pub in, and they were cute pictures, and Penny said, why don't you stick them on Facebook? And I found myself checking how many people had liked it, and wanting people to like it.
Yeah, what's
and I
wrong
thought,
with
no,
that?
well, because it starts a slippery slope of doing things
people
that you
liking
want,
you.
Well, that you want stroked, and you feel that little endorphin rush when somebody strokes you with that action. And And then I'd check, think, oh gosh, maybe not enough people, or maybe too many, whatever, all that nonsense that goes through your head. I thought, I don't want this.
I think that, well, you don't do small doses well, do you?
No, moderation's not really in my genetic
Your
makeup.
forte.
No, I know. You're right. I should be a grown-up, mature, moderate person like yourself.
No, in the sense that I'm thinking, the way I am like that. I mean, I post something and I really enjoy when a lot of people like it. But this doesn't really make me post more stuff. I actually post very little content. So I guess it's
maybe
somehow
I could find a happy medium or middle way.
Yeah, I mean, I guess somehow the trigger effect is not working. In the sense, when I post something, yes, I care very much about, but then I don't need to go back for another shot.
Yeah.
Which is, I mean, according to the whistleblower, is exactly the mechanism that they are trying to promote and and that makes them, well, money basically.
It's funny the thing about ads as well. I mean, I think we've talked about this. I'm sure we have, but I'm relatively immune to ads. I mean, all these donkey's years that I've been on the internet, it's overstating to say I don't see them, but I sort of don't see them. My brain sort of almost like filters out all the noise around the stuff I'm actually looking at. So I'm relatively protected against that.
I have noticed recently that every once in a while I click on ads on Instagram. I guess that for some reason the Instagram algorithm is putting stuff in my stream that I'm interested into. I mean, even recently there was like an ad for somebody that they do, brick prints and cutouts that you can paste on walls. It was actually something that I was interested. I mean, I wasn't looking for it, but it was like, oh, I would like to put a big logo in our big meeting room, and an ad appeared. Literally, I'm not saying that it was any cause effect. I mean, I had been thinking this for the last 2 years, and then I found this ad. But just to say, it was an ad or a very specific service that I was actually curious about and interested. And it does happen every once in a while.
Yeah. But then Instagram was one of the places which I came out of earliest because it was so intrusive. Because I'm into the outdoors and mountains and stuff, I'd end up with these pictures of mountains and stuff that weren't from friends; they were adverts. And I thought, enough off. I want to. I think, well, that's a nice picture. Well, it's not real. Yeah.
Did you read about the Chinese AI ethical guidelines?
No, tell me more.
So the Chinese government has been cracking down on big tech companies for a while now. So they made video games. If you are a minor, I think you can only play video games for 90 minutes a day, a week. Yeah. It's like they are limiting that. They are imposing to social media company to create some kind of data portability so that users can actually access and move their data if they want to. And I think yesterday or a couple of days ago, they published these guidelines that are very specific about what AI should or should not do. I mean, you can look them up, but it's interesting because it's basically saying that the humans should always be aware if they're speaking to or communicating with an AI. They should be able to disable it. There's this whole thing about being in control, and I mean, I find this strange because it's all things that all these years we have said somebody should do something about these big companies, and then the Chinese Communist Party comes around, and it's like there is it reminds me there is a famous bit by comedian Louis C.K. that is where he said that he has these thoughts that he classified as of course, but maybe.
Mm-hmm.
And, for example, say, of course, we should protect sensitive people with allergies from nuts.
Mm-hmm.
But maybe if touching a peanut kills you, you shouldn't be around. And, it's like, and he goes on with a number of examples of and then he goes back there, no, of course not.
Mm-hmm.
But maybe.
Yeah.
And it's like, of course you don't want a dictatorial communist country to decide what companies might or might not do. But
well,
maybe. Preventing childs from frying their brains playing video games while they're kids might not be a bad idea after all.
And you get the whole rhetoric around China being this evil force and we have to protect ourselves. And
it is. I mean, it's a dictatorship. It's against freedom of people. But maybe...
I know. Yeah, and America's the land of the free, where you've got democracy, and it all works.
Yeah,
but maybe.
But yeah, exactly. I'll put a link to this sketch in the description.
Because I misheard what you said. I thought you were saying it was Chinese had developed some AI that had developed the guidelines, which is going back to my article about getting the AI to write our next ism.
No. These are the Chinese that write the ethical guidelines for AI, dictating what AI can and cannot do. Well, of course, they're dictating what people can and cannot do. Yeah. Why shouldn't they dictate what technology can and cannot do?
But maybe we should get...
Exactly.
Maybe we should get... I was only half joking about getting the AI to write our next ism, because in a sense, once people get involved, you've got prejudice, partial understanding, axes to grind, all the stuff that tends to make the world go wrong. Finding something that just found the middle way that was the least distressing for the greatest number of people wouldn't be so stupid.
No, the problem is that we would need some alien to write the AI for us, because as long as people write it, all their biases will go in the technology.
No, because we know, at a very top level.
When you say we, you mean the two of us. If we do it, then it's going to be fine.
No. I mean the people, humanity. That's just why we don't need the 10 Commandments and all that shit. We know what causes pain and distress, and that we probably shouldn't do it. This isn't rocket science. All we need is some mechanism that shows us, slaps us in the face, and says, well, actually, the consequences of you doing X, Y, or Z are causing people in distress and pain and whatever. It's because it's getting so complex. I mean, just watching some of the nature films from David Attenborough again on the telly the other night there, and just how incredibly interconnected and complex nature is. And how, that whole idea of civilization being a plague is increasingly feeling true. How we as a species have just really screwed it up big time. And pretending that we were separate from all of that we were somehow outside nature and we could benefit from, use nature and consume nature and dominate nature, and it's us. It's nothing separate.
Yeah.
It's bollocks.
I have been reading lately the Ian N. Banks novels, the Culture series, which is all about this civilization that has been around for tens of thousands of years, and they have developed these super smart computers, and it's basically a future or a present, actually, because this civilization actually coexists in our times at some point, where humans from all over the universe live in a much more, in a state of total abundance, collaborating with these super brain, they call them the minds, that are smarter than humans and then somehow help humanity moving forward. It's very, very well written, especially because it started writing these, I think, in the 80s.
Interesting.
It's if you haven't, I mean, I'm listening to the audiobooks, but I highly recommend them. They're very, very good.
I should do. Yeah, I need to get into more non-fiction, especially science fiction. For the reasons
It's brilliant. It's very well written, and it makes you think. Especially, I'm reading now a bit where they come to Earth, and it's the 70s, I think, and. Yeah, and they have some interesting consideration about the Earthlings.
Interesting.
Anyway, I'm liking very much my new 13 Pro.
Oh, I was just going to ask. The camera looks amazing, is it? I mean, it looks fantastic.
Yeah. I was there on the first day. I was there. Basically, the day when they started allowing to book the time, I was sitting there reloading the page. And as soon as it came out, I could have booked a meeting at like 7:30. Would have been like the first to get an iPhone. Mm-hmm. But I couldn't care to go to the Apple store that early in the morning. So I went at lunchtime. There was a queue outside. Not huge, but I mean, I went to the one in the shopping center in White City, so it wasn't a big store. I had to wait for about half an hour.
Interesting. Yeah.
And I traded in my old iPhone 11.
Mm-hmm. Was that part of the upgrade thing still, or have you come out of that?
Oh no, it's a separate. I restarted an upgrade program, but right. the trading in is a separate process. Right. So because I couldn't do the transfer between phones in the store because it said even if you do it here, it's going to take like a minute per gigabyte, and right. I have around 120 gigs on my phone, so I didn't want to sit there for 2 hours and waiting for a transfer. Yeah. So I said, all right, I'll just restore it from iCloud when I get back home, which basically meant that I had to go all the way from the shopping center in White City to Ealing, which, if you don't know, is like 20 minutes tube ride without my phone.
Oh, no.
And it says I had a new phone, but it was completely useless. Yeah. And it was like, I think I checked it, I touched my pocket 34 times in the time. And it was, beside the fact that I paid the tube but I had a card, so I was able to pay I probably could have done it with my watch.
The watch would have done it without the phone. Yeah.
But it was ridiculous, this thing that I'm walking around town without a phone. I'm not connected to anything. Shit, that's uncomfortable. That's very uncomfortable.
Well, because you see, I'm still drawn to a new watch more than a new phone. I mean, the phone does 90% of what I want. I mean, it would be lovely to have that amazing camera, but I don't have any other real driver to get that. But I would like to be able to walk around without my phone and just my watch. So I will, the next time I get one, go to the cellular. And there just wasn't enough difference between the 5, which is what I have, and the 7 this time around to make me do it. But I can imagine next year, then I will get a cellular one and just be free.
Yeah, that's an interesting idea well, you've always been ahead of everybody in terms of reducing your digital footprint.
Well, it goes along with being on the thing on social media less. I have always been a big user of Shlomo on the watch, so I use it more than most, I guess. I mean, I use it all the time to remind myself to do things. I use OmniFocus and I get stuff into it through the watch all the time. Things like making appointments, it's so much easier to use voice for that than to find your way into the calendar and find your way into a new app.
Or reminders also.
Yeah, well, as I say, I use OmniFocus rather than reminders, but the same principle. And replying to text messages, I do that through the watch. Even in the car, it's interesting because one car's got CarPlay, which is great, but the other one doesn't. And it's a faff trying to get to the phone and get the phone to the right page. And I even went through and used the new Focus thing to set up shortcuts. But they want you to press run every bloody time you invoke a shortcut from the watch. Well, of course I wanted to run. That's why I pressed the bloody complication in the first place. So I've pulled back on that, but I certainly drive podcast, Audible, and music from my watch rather than the phone when I'm driving, because it just takes, straightforward one click and you're away sort of thing,
That's cool. Well, I never drive, but
well,
it's actually an interesting application.
Well, what was also interesting was that I needed something, because I'm using the small complications at the bottom of the infograph digital for that. I needed something to put in the middle. And I've actually put the compass in the middle. And what's really interesting, it turns the line of your watch into a sort of rolling compass, which amazingly works whether your phone's flat or not, which is quite disconcerting. But that's quite interesting too, just sort of lifting your wrist up and going, we're heading north. I wouldn't have thought that, or whatever,
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah. I don't have the compass in mine, but I've seen. But my wife's phone has she has an SE, I think, but it has a compass, and I saw that. Well, that's cool.
It's remarkably accurate.
It works very well.
So so it's interesting because whether the rumours prove true or not, but I guess the next iteration of the watch will have more of the health stuff in it. They're sort of muttering about blood pressure and blood sugar and stuff, and it'll be just interesting to see what they manage in those terms. But that would be another reason to go with that. Yeah,
no, definitely. I mean, given that I'm sort of dealing with both problems, I would, I guess even if it was just one of those two, I would definitely upgrade.
Yeah. Although it's interesting, I mean, I had just as a routine checkup at the doctor's just before we started. One of the things was I have a slightly arrhythmic ectopic, I think they call it, heartbeat. And she wants to check that again. And I mentioned something about checking it relatively frequently with my watch, and she just looked blankly at me as if, what's this man talking about, So it's not quite impacted the medical profession here yet.
It's funny because even if I have noticed, for example, that the app that I use to interact with my local GP with the surgery actually uploads, after asking for authorization, gets access to a whole bunch of stuff from my health stack and synchronize it.
No,
so
that's not fair. I need to move to Ealing.
So basically weight and blood pressure measurements and a whole bunch of other things get synchronized. Cool. The thing is that I don't think that the GPs actually know this or have access or give a shit about it.
Maybe it's not that different then.
So the end...
Just to clarify for the listeners, I'm actually very healthy and very, very rarely go to visit the doctor. So this is all just geekiness rather than any sense of impending doom. But yeah.
10 years. Tomorrow is 10 years since Jobs died.
Was that to make me feel worried or?
No, I'm just saying. I'm just moving on.
It's interesting, isn't it? I mean, I saw many articles about the fact that it's also 10 years since Tim Cook took over. And, how he's taken it from a $500 million company to, was it 2 or 3 trillion now? It's not a bad batting average, really. And all the muttering that there was about the, losing innovation and all that sort of stuff. And, you could argue that they haven't had an earth-moving, world-changing platform, but all of their devices have moved forward significantly.
Oh yeah.
Look,
I basically upgraded after 2 years, but if I compare this phone to the one I had before, there are two completely different machines, and the quality, the screen, the cameras, the batteries, it's all significantly better. Then, yes, it's not a completely new innovation thing. It's still an iPhone and still does the same things that my previous iPhone did. But, once you invent an iPhone, all you can do is improve the iPhone. It's
but also, the software. I my daughter's boyfriend called me a phaser because I go in phases. I get obsessive with phases of things. But I've sort of switched back, having bought my clicky keyboard to use with the iPad. I'm sort of now getting bored with that. So I've gone back to using the Apple Pencil and just finding that miraculous. Scribble on the iPad and how accurate it is when I think back to the various attempts over the years of me using technology that people have had. And likewise the voice, the fact that the dictation has become so reliable. To be able to interact with devices using voice and handwriting to the level that I am is bloody miraculous, to be honest. So that's not innovating.
Back when I was home this summer, one day I found myself wearing a black polo with embroidered in the front Apple Newton. What was it? Was the Pioneer Developers, 1993.
Right. Oh, I loved my Newton. I loved it.
And it reminded me of writing with a stylo and and I also had a modem so you can connect and do things online.
Great fun. And it was the early days of QuickTime as well, so you'd get little 1-inch square QuickTime movies would play on it too. But it's funny, Paolo, and it's something we've talked about before, but one of our friends who I'm pretty sure doesn't listen to this podcast, a picture of her daughter, we're friends through the antenatal class, so all the daughters are the same sort of age, and there was a picture of her daughter at a cute age that I popped up in the photos widget on the phone. So I sent it to her and explained that this was why I was sending it to her, and she said, "What's the photos widget?" And she uses an iPhone, and so I explained to her what this was. Oh, she said, "That sounds cool, I must try that." And it just made me realise that there's so much of this wonderful, joyous, clever, reliable functionality in people's devices that they have no clue about.
Yeah.
And it's partly because it's really hard. There's so much of it, it's funny. It really pisses me off a bit that the tech punditry, the podcasters who do Apple stuff, have been writing off iOS 15 as an incremental upgrade and nothing much. Somebody did a video. There have been 300 things have changed in the operating system in iOS 15, and there's some of those 300 things are delightful and clever and innovative, but it's only nutters like you and me that will ever watch an hour-long video telling us that.
I don't know. I mean, I think that it happens in pockets. The other day,
no pun intended.
I was on the tube and I was, as usual, watching over the shoulder of somebody using their phone, and there was this young teenager girl who had a whole bunch of very cleverly set up widgets on their on iOS.
Yeah, that became a thing, didn't it? Yeah.
And I was thinking, so it actually, I was wondering, do people use them? Because a lot of people I know don't really use them. I mean,
well, and there's that whole thing about customizing them, wasn't there? And the backgrounds of them and the color schemes and stuff. It became very, what was it? Widget Smith. David _Smith, who's been developing stuff for years with modest income, suddenly just the thing took off because suddenly millions of people were downloading it because it allowed them to hack the widgets to some extent.
Mm-hmm. So, but anyway, I think that there are groups of people that actually use some of these features because, essentially, because they know somebody who tell them and they see each other, and so everybody is doing it. And there are a huge group of people that are insulated from this. And, I can't tell you to how many people I show them how they can search the photo on their phone using text. You can search for bicycle and you will find a whole bunch of photos in your phone with bicycle. And people say, "Oh, this is amazing. I didn't know it existed."
Yeah.
It's like,
talking of which, has the new thing in iOS 15 where it will identify not only that it's a dog, but which type of dog? Does that work with your phone? Because I don't think it's been unleashed in the UK yet.
No, I haven't seen that.
So when you do a search,
I don't take that many photos of dogs, to be honest.
Well, but flowers or trees, what it does is if there's the AI recognizes not only that it's a flower, but will tell you what kind of flower. So in the middle of the flower, there's a little eye appears, and if you click on that, and that then tells you the information about the type of flower, the type of dog, or whatever.
I haven't read anything about that.
Oh yeah, I mean it's one of what they call it marquee features of the operating system, but it's not available in the UK as far as I can tell.
Probably because we have different flowers.
Yeah, we don't deserve it.
Yeah. No, I mean, I like the real-time text recognition.
Yeah, that's incredible,
stuff.
isn't it? Yeah.
It turned out to be useful the other day. I had to copy a password, like one of those long passwords, between devices, but for some reason the copy and paste. Because you know how some application disable paste in a password that I hate because thank you, that's helpful.
Yeah.
So I couldn't paste, but clearly because they hadn't had an opportunity to disable also scan text option, I still have the scan text option. Yeah. So I turned on scan text, I pointed it at the password printed on my iPad, and it worked perfectly.
Interesting.
And it's
it's just the fact that it all happens live inside the camera and the translate thing as well. You just point it at a sign that's in Japanese and click the button and it tells you what it says.
Yeah. No, it's. I mean, the fact that all these computation can be done on board, is remarkable.
Yeah,
and I mean, I played a little bit with the cinematic mode. And I mean, yes, of course, it's not perfect. I mean, it's not like a real lens. Guess what? But it's remarkable how good it is. I mean, from the little test I done, is like I shoot a piece of a landscape, then I turn the phone on me, and as I'm turning the phone, you can see how it goes out of focus, and then basically my face in focus, the background is blurred, and then I turn it around, and it goes back to blur to focus.
Yeah.
And it's and then you can go and edit and decide to focus something different.
I was going to say if you don't like what it's done, you can redo it. Yeah.
Oh, you can change it.
Yeah.
You can basically go at any point and say, okay, now focus on this, now focus on that.
When you think of how much it's having to store to do that, I mean, it's just.
Yeah, well, it's probably not that much data because it's going to be another channel with a depth. But probably it's not a super high resolution. Probably it's not even a full resolution channel. It's another 8-bit channel, so it's probably not a huge amount of data. I think that remarkable thing is that it is collecting the data in real time and then doing calculation on the data in real time and store it in the phone. Yeah. Pretty. I'm happy with my new phone. I'm. For the first few days, I found going from the rounded borders to this kind of sharp border a little bit unsettling, and the bulge on the back for the lenses is actually huge. I'm already used to it. I mean, the other thing is that it was easier on the other phone when it was off to know which side was up because the cover was open on the bottom, so there was a visual cue.
Yeah.
And this one, if you, I find myself every once in a while looking at my phone upside down, but I guess it's just something that you grow into. So,
well, I was just listening to Mike Break Weekly, and they were talking about the iPad Mini. Apparently, whichever way up you have the phone, the up and down volume buttons stay the same way. So it knows that you got it knows that you got the iPad upside down, so it makes the top button still the one that turns the volume up.
I never tried. I have to try on my iPad. Yeah, it's probably true.
Well, it's just the new iPad Mini. I think. I don't think it's the others.
Oh, okay.
But yeah.
Well, why would they? Anyway.
Yeah.
39 minutes. That's way too long. That's way too long. We got to wrap up.
It's not too long. It's just right, Paolo.
All right.
See you next time.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.